She thought he was just her Uber driver. Sara held her son's hand the way you hold a small, fragile plan. Close enough to steady, not so tight it snaps. Morning smelled of oil and boiling tea. A thin rain glazed the sidewalks. Her uniform clung damply to her back. Today mattered. Orientation at a company that might finally pay the rent and hush the landlord's warnings. She had slept on the floor for 3 nights, practiced answers in the mirror, and ironed the only shoes without holes. Ion skipped a puddle and tugged her toward the curb. "Mom, hurry," he said. The car arrived. Not the compact hatch she used, but a sleek black sedan. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. He stepped out polite, wiping his hands on a spotless coat. He offered the door with an easy, neutral nod. She thanked him, breath hitching from the small kindness of a stranger. Inside the car, the silence was a thin sheet. Rain tapped the window like a slow metronome. Sara spoke instinctive and raw about juggling night shifts and school projects, about the landlord's calls, about the way the refrigerator hummed at night. The man listened without interrupting, his profile calm in the soft interior light. When she stopped, embarrassed by the spill of her life, he reached into the cup holder and handed her a paper cup of tea. Glass towers rose beyond the windscreen. He drove with quiet confidence. She rehearsed how to exit gracefully, to show the poise she had practiced. At the building, her stomach folded into an anxious knot. She gathered her bag, smoothed her shirt, and turned to thank him. He was already standing, a polite distance away, hands folded. "Good luck," he said simply. A woman in a sharp suit called Mr. Raymond heads turned. The man, the one who had offered tea in the door, straightened and staff clustered, their voices soft with reverence. Sara paused, the word hovered. Mr. Raymond, CEO. The staff's respect tightened the space like a hand. For a moment, the world narrowed to her breathing and the soft click of heels on marble. Her cheeks burned. She had stepped from a small kindness into a quiet flash of humiliation. The angle of light caught his face as he looked toward her. He offered no expression she could read, only a careful, courteous nod. She walked through the doors, heart loud and oddly hollow, unsure whether to run or stand very still. Inside the lobby, a receptionist handed orientation paperwork. Sara's hands trembled as she took the forms. The pen felt heavy. Each page seemed to whisper expectations she could not afford to fail. She slid into the room and chose a seat at the back, palms cold. People around her checked phones and smoothed resumes with practiced calm. When the man from the car, Mr. Raymond, entered moments later, the air changed. He did not sit at the head. He paused in the doorway and looked at Sara longer than polite. The orientation room smelled faintly of coffee and new paper. The hum of the projector filled the silence as the HR manager fussed with slides. Sara kept her gaze fixed on the notes in her lap, though the ink blurred under her nervous stare. Around her, quiet laughter moved like wind. Short, sharp bursts that died quickly when Raymond entered. He stood near the glass wall, composed, a man so accustomed to being watched that the weight of attention seemed part of his posture. "Good morning," he said, his voice low but clear. Sara's pen slipped from her fingers and rolled across the floor. She bent to grab it, knocking over her water bottle in the process. A whisper of snickers rose, quickly hushed. Raymond's eyes followed the small chaos. Without a word, he stepped forward, picked up the pen, and placed it back on her desk, their hands almost touched. "It happens," he murmured, a faint half-smile before he returned to the front. The gesture burned hotter than any reprimand. She felt both grateful and smaller somehow. The HR manager continued, introducing departments, listing benefits, policies, expectations. But every sentence felt distant, muffled by the rush of Sara's own pulse. When the presentation ended, employees were asked to stand, introduce themselves, and share what had brought them to the company. By the time her turn came, her throat had dried to sand. "I'm Sara Khan," she began. I used to work in customer service. I'm a single mother and—" A few heads turned, someone coughed. She stopped, forcing a polite smile. "I'm just grateful to be here." Raymond's eyes flicked up at the word grateful. He nodded slightly, then looked away, expression unreadable. After the session, small groups formed around coffee cups. Sara drifted toward the corner, pretending to check messages on her cheap phone. She could feel the subtle radius of avoidance around her, the quiet judgment of people who had witnessed her mistake outside. In her head, she replayed the moment, the car door, the tea, Her casual chatter about poverty and struggle. Every sentence now felt foolish, loud, exposed. She stayed late that day, filing reports she wasn't required to file, too embarrassed to leave when others did. Near 7 o'clock, the lights dimmed to their evening setting. Only Raymond remained in the glass office above, visible through the blinds. He was writing something, his brow slightly furrowed, unaware, or pretending not to notice, her stillness below. When she finally packed up, she caught her reflection in the elevator door. Hair messy, eyes rimmed with fatigue. The look of someone trying not to cry where anyone might see. Downstairs, the same rain had returned, soft but persistent. She opened her umbrella, half-broken, and stepped into the wet city night. The streetlights smeared gold across puddles. Somewhere behind her, a car door clicked. She turned, expecting another commuter. It was Raymond, standing beneath the canopy, speaking quietly into his phone. Their eyes met, briefly, accidentally. He gave a small nod of acknowledgement, polite again, but his gaze lingered a second longer than formality required. Sara turned away first. The elevator of shame and hope carried her in equal measure into the dark street. 2 days later, the morning light cut through the office blinds like quiet stripes. Sara arrived early, the first to switch on the computers and brew coffee. The air smelled of dust and something new, like a small chance she was still afraid to believe in. She kept her head down, working faster than the clock demanded. Around mid-morning, Raymond walked through the corridor with a few managers. His stride was brisk, his tone calm, the sound of authority that made people straighten automatically. When he passed Sara's desk, she murmured, "Good morning." He nodded once, almost too subtly to notice, and kept walking. The small acknowledgement still warmed her like a match in her palm. By noon, she slipped to the cafeteria for lunch, a sandwich she couldn't quite finish. Her phone buzzed. It was a photo from Ion's teacher. Her son had made a drawing titled "My Mom's New Office." She smiled at the stick figures. One with long hair, one in a suit, a tall building, and the words written in uneven letters, "Thank you for helping my mom." That evening, as Raymond entered his office, the same drawing lay on his desk, folded neatly, placed beside his reports. The secretary must have mistaken it for correspondence, but the childish scrawl caught his eye. He unfolded it slowly, reading the uneven handwriting. The words landed like a stone dropped in still water. He sat back, fingers tightening around the paper. The drawing's sun was too large, its lines too bright, but something inside him cracked with the memory of another child, himself, waiting by a factory gate for a mother who never came home from the late shift. He pressed the paper flat on the desk and stared until the room blurred. The hum of the air conditioner sounded like wind through an old alley. The next morning, Sara arrived to find a short email in her inbox. "Meet me at the cafe across the street at 5:00 p.m. We need to discuss your project proposal." Her stomach dropped. Discuss could mean dismiss. She rehearsed apologies under her breath all afternoon. At 5 sharp, she walked into the cafe. It smelled of cinnamon and espresso, the soft jazz almost too cheerful. Raymond sat by the window, no tie, sleeves rolled up. "Sit," he said gently. "I wanted to talk, not about reports." Sara hesitated. "Did I do something wrong?" He shook his head. "No, you just reminded me of someone." His gaze drifted to the steam rising from his cup. "My mother worked 3 jobs. I used to wait for her outside a bakery. She'd come out with flour on her hands, smiling like she wasn't tired." Something in her eased. She told him about nights when Ion cried from hunger, but still told her she'd find a better job. Their words softened, threading the air between them like low music. When they finally stood to leave, Raymond said quietly, "Don't apologize for that day. You treated me like a person." Sara stood behind the curtains, clutching her cue cards, her heart sprinting like it wanted to escape. She had been chosen by the CEO himself to present the new project proposal. Everyone whispered about it. When her name was called, her legs nearly gave out, but she walked forward anyway. Steps steady, eyes lifted. The screen behind her came alive with her slides, clear, humble, but full of heart. "This project," she began, voice trembling, "is about giving people like me, single parents, workers, dreamers, a fair chance to rise." The room went still. Raymond, seated in the front row, watched her with the faintest nod, like a silent push of courage. "That's my mom," he whispered too loudly. and a soft ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Sara smiled, the fear melting. She finished her last line with a steady breath. Talent doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it shows up tired, late, and still refuses to give up. When the applause broke, she blinked fast to stop tears. Raymond stood first, clapping slowly, then the entire hall followed. Cameras flashed. But more than pride, there was something heavier in his eyes, something like quiet redemption. After the event, as the crowd thinned, Sara waited outside near the elevator, unsure whether to thank him or simply disappear. The doors opened, and there he was. No guards, no board members, just him. "You did well," he said, voice low. "I just spoke the truth," she replied. He smiled. That's what people forget to do. Then, after a pause, "Sara, I'm starting a foundation for single parents. I want you to lead it." Her mouth parted in disbelief. "Me? You understand the struggle better than anyone in this building," he said. "And," he hesitated, "almost awkward now, Ion's drawing still sits on my desk, reminds me what matters." For the first time, she saw not the millionaire CEO, but a man who carried loneliness in expensive silence. She nodded, tears spilling freely this time. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for the job, for seeing me." He looked away, smiling faintly. Sometimes the people we underestimate drive us further than those we chase. As they left the building, rain began to fall, gentle, cleansing. Sara stepped out first, lifting her face toward the gray sky. Ion ran to her, clutching her hand, and Raymond held the umbrella above them both. "Mom," Ion said softly, "is he your new boss?" Sara looked at Raymond. He chuckled under his breath. "Something like that," she said, her voice warm with unspoken promise. The frame could have ended there, but the camera lingers. The three of them walking through the rain, sharing one umbrella. Three quiet hearts mending the same way, through kindness that found them by mistake.